إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد، أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى: يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ شداد لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. صدق الله العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد كلما ذكره ذاكرون، وصل على سيدنا مولانا محمد كلما غفر عن ذكره الغافلون. اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد أفضل صلوات. My respected brothers and sisters and honorable elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
One of the great blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world upon a man and a woman is the gift of a child. Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam very keenly made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a progeny, for a child. But when he made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't just ask for a child. He asked for a pure child, a pious child. He said, Rabbi habli min ladunka dhurriyatan tayyiba. O my Lord, grant me from yourself a pure and pious progeny. And when we study the lives of prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we find one thing very common in all of their examples, and that is their love for their children. And that is also evident from the stories of Ibrahim alayhi salam, from the stories of Yaqub alayhi salam, and other prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who had children. When we look into many profound prayers made by the friend of Allah, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, we find a very common element in that. And Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he settled his family, Hajra alayhi salam, and his beloved son Ismail alayhi salam in Makkah al-Mukarramah, he made a set of du'as at that very sensitive moment. It's not easy for a father to leave his family behind. But Ibrahim alayhi salam was always obedient to the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to leave his family in Makkah and go back to Palestine, he complied and he obeyed the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when he left them in Makkah, at a certain point he turned around and he made these special supplications to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the prayers that he made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was specifically about his progeny. And in every prayer, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam's prayer, his supplication is repeated. Every time we perform salah, we end our salah with the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam is Rabbi ij'alni muqim as-salah. O Allah, O my Lord, make me the one who establishes prayer, who establishes salah. Wa min dhurriyyati, and even from my progeny, make them obedient and make them establish their salah as well. So at that time when he was leaving his family behind in Mecca, he said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Allah, save me and save my progeny, save my offspring, that we ever fall into the idol worship. وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Because it's important for us to understand the burden of responsibility that Allah has placed on our shoulders as parents. Without any doubt, it's one of the great gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you don't know the value of that, ask those who do not have that gift of a child, who have been longing for that gift for a long time. And it is also evident from the story of Zakaria alayhi salam. He had been longing for having a child for a long time, but he didn't. He himself had passed that age. He was already in old age, and his wife was not already in old age, but she was also barren. She was incapable of conceiving. But he never lost hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in one of those moments when he was truly inspired by something that he witnessed when he was serving Maryam alayhi salam, he truly turned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and made that dua. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him. وَزَكَرِيَّا إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْنِي فَرْدًا وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ. And remember Zakaria, when he called on his Lord, and he said, "Oh my Lord, do not let me die alone. Do not let me die without any offspring. لا تذرني فردا وأنت خير الوارثين." Although you are the best of those who inherit, but I want my children to inherit me, so they can continue my legacy, my good work that I have been doing all my life. I want that good work to continue. And naturally, that is how the legacy is passed on. Parents pass on the values that they were passed on by their parents. Parents, they try to instill those values in their children, so their children can continue the good work that they had started and that they had been doing their entire life. So the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wished for the same. And it is a responsibility that Allah is certainly going to question us. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in one hadith, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ وَالرَّجُلُ رَاعٍ فِي أَهْلِهِ وَهُوَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ وَالْمَرْأَةُ رَاعِيَةٌ فِي بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا وَمَسْئُولَةٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهَا. Every person is responsible for his flock. Every person is going to be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And your family, your children are your flock. So you are going to be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did you fulfill your obligation as you were supposed to? Did you do your job as you were supposed to? And if we live in a culture, unfortunately, we live in a society, unfortunately, where this part of society is completely ignored, where children are growing up without any morals, without any values, without any character, and those children are losing their way. At the same time, we also learn good examples of good child upbringing. Look at the situation in Gaza. Look at the situation in Palestine. Those families have been cut off from the rest of the world for a long time. They decided to focus on that generation of children. They decided to teach them about the importance of Al-Aqsa. They decided to teach them about the importance of Islam, about the importance of love for Allah, love for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, love for Quran, importance of sabr. Today, you will not see them complaining about Allah. Here, we live in luxury. We live in a way that kings used to live in old days, or perhaps better. And if something small happens to us, something small is taken away from us, we begin to complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, why you did this to me? Why?" In a way, we are implying that Allah is being unjust to me. And these children have lost everybody. There are children who have lost both parents, uncles, aunts, grandparents, everybody around them, and they're left with nothing. Yet, their foundation that they were raised on was a strong foundation. The values that they were taught were strong values, the values of Islam, the values of our beloved faith. And when you have done that, then you can take a breath of relief. Then you can understand that Islam will live on no matter what. Islam will not only survive, Islam will thrive. And the best values are the values of Islam. The best morals are the morals of Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us not to only worry about yourself, but also to worry about your family. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O believers, save yourselves and your families from the fire. In the same sentence, in the same line, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the two together, which shows the significant parallel that exists between the two. Saving yourself is akin to saving your family, and saving your family is akin to saving yourself. If you're only worried about yourself and not family, you're doomed. If you only worry about your family and not yourself, you're doomed. You have to take the two together. These are two responsibilities, two obligations from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O believers, save yourselves and save your families from the fire. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. The fuel of which is people and stones. This reflects on the intensity of that fire and how destructive and painful that fire is, which Allah is warning us against. And to do things in this life to save ourselves and protect ourselves from that fire. And you can protect yourself from that fire by following Quran and following the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our children are also a source of happiness for us. Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayat ad-dunya. Your wealth and your children are an adornment of the life of this world. They bring you happiness if they are doing the right thing. If they end up doing the wrong thing, that brings you sadness too. So it is a burden, it is a responsibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed on our shoulders. In another dua made by Sayyidina, in another ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Yaqub alayhi salam, his last moments on earth. And he lived a very long life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him a long life. According to some mufassirun, he lived for 140 years. It's a long life. And by then, all his sons had been well into their hundreds as well, including Yusuf alayhi salam, who was also very old at that time. But on his deathbed, he called his children and asked them some very basic questions that if you were to ask a grown-up man, they would think you are ridiculing them. You are mocking them by asking those rudimentary questions. But Allah narrates that in Quran. أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ حَضَرَ يَعْقُوبَ الْمَوْتِ. Were you present when death was about to come to Yaqub, when he was about to die? إِذْ قَالَ لِبَنِيهِ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ بَعْدِي. And when he asked his sons, his children, what are you going to worship after me? Think about how basic this question is. And if we look at from the outset, it feels like it's not even worthy of being asked at that time from children who are into their old age themselves. And this family is not an ordinary family. This is the family of a prophet of Allah, who happens to be the son of another prophet of Allah, the nephew of another prophet of Allah, and a grandson of another prophet of Allah, and a father of a prophet of Allah. This is that family. If we were to give the title of family of prophets, this certainly is the most worthy of that title. Because in this family, we have Ibrahim alayhi salam, we have Ishaq alayhi salam, we have Ismail alayhi salam, we have Yaqub alayhi salam, and we have Yusuf alayhi salam. And Yaqub alayhi salam happens to be father of 12 sons, out of whom one is a great prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then from that progeny, there came hundreds of thousands of prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he asked his sons this basic question, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ بَعْدِي. What are you going to worship after me? On his deathbed, he's worried about his children, which tells you there will never be a time for a parent, for a father, for a mother to become neglectful and to close their eyes from their responsibility towards their children. Yes, children will say, I'm a grown up. I'm 18 years old now. I'm 16 years old now. I'm a grown up. I'm 30 years old. I'm a grown up. But they're still your children. A child will always be a child to a parent. So your responsibility is still not absolved. On his deathbed, he asked this question, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ بَعْدِي قالوا نعبد إلهك وإله آبائك إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق إلها واحدا. And in one voice, they all responded to their father. They replied to the question of their father by saying, we will worship your Lord, your God, and the God of Ibrahim, Ismail, and Ishaq, the one God. وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ. And we are obedient to Him. We are submissive to Him, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is when he took a sigh of relief. And that's when Yaqub alayhi salam felt like he has done his job and now he can peacefully move to the next world. So that responsibility does not end even on deathbed. That responsibility ends when you have literally left from this world. وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. And ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not only prayer, is not only salah or zakah. Every act of righteousness, every act of obedience is also ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which you have to continuously do. There's no pause, there's no stop in that. In our duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no weekend. We can't skip Fajr on Saturday or Sunday with the concept of it's the weekend. I can skip Fajr today. You can't skip Zohar on Saturday or Sunday because it's weekend. No. It's until you're alive, until you're breathing, you have to pray. Even if you are in the hospital, on the bed in the hospital, you still have to pray. As long as you're able to do, as long as you're awake, you're conscious, you still have to do. The form may change. It may accommodate your specific condition. If you're unable to stand, you will have a permission to sit and pray. If you're unable to sit and pray, you may even have a permission to lay on your bed and pray. But you still have to pray until you're alive. And when you leave from this world, that's when your duty is done. That's when your job is done. So we should do everything that we can to instill the values of Islam in our children. Our society that we live in is a very dangerous society in terms of how corrupt the morality has become, how low the human values have gone because of all the propaganda that's going on, all the heinous things that are being promoted, propagated, and taught in schools, in public schools, in colleges, in universities, which is responsible for the decay in our moral values in this society. So we need to create a fortress around ourselves. We need to create a fortress around our children so we can protect them and we can raise them to be better human beings, better Muslims, stronger Muslims, and loyal to Allah, obedient to Allah, loving to Allah, loving to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And parents should know that the benefit of doing the right thing with your children will come back to you not only in Akhirah, but here in this world as well. If you teach your child the right things, the right values, they will grow up to be honored, to serve you, to be obedient to you, to respect you, and not to throw you out when you are in your old age, when you are 70 years old or 65 years old, throw you out in a nursing home and say, I'm too busy. I have my own family, I have my own job, I have my own business, I have my own work. I don't have time to take care of my mother or my father. So I should just admit them in a nursing home and then just visit them on a Mother's Day or a Father's Day. Or if you are more kind than that, just visit them once a month and think that you're absolved of your obligation. And that's the fundamental flaw of our society. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us and enable us to raise our children in the way that it pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it preserves Islam, it preserves the values of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us the ability to practice upon the sunnahs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and live our lives according to the way of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. We would like to request everyone to make special dua for the beloved mother of Brother Nadeem Saddam. She is in the hospital and she is perhaps in the last days of her life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her comfort. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her relief. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for the entire family. These moments, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for all of them. And please make dua for Brother Mahmoud Alam himself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him shifa. And it goes without saying that we have to continuously, non-stop, make dua for our brothers and sisters, our sons and our daughters in Gaza, in Palestine, In the last 3 months, they have gone through and still going through a genocide. There's an active genocide that is taking place in front of our own eyes. And the world is just silently watching. Except a few countries, alhamdulillah, may Allah make their voice stronger. Most of the countries that call themselves civilized, that call themselves humanitarian or care about the human values, they're just standing by and watching the killing of children, watching the killing of men and women, watching the killing of wounded, watching the killing of helpless, watching the killing of babies and infants right in front of their eyes. It's just too painful, and it shows you that when you have lost your humanity, then you become an animal. Then you don't care about other people. Then you don't care about other human beings. Even if they are different from you, than your race, than your religion, than your color of your skin, they're still human beings. But when you have lost your values, then you have lost the value of humanity as well. So we have to continue to make dua for our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, and continue to do everything that we can to raise voice for them, raise voice on their behalf, and be their voice on every platform, wherever you can, be their voice, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them relief. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect their land. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant freedom to Palestine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them freedom, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept their immense sacrifices that they have made in all of this time of persecution, in all of this time of execution, in all of this time of occupation and torture. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them relief from all of that sooner rather than later. Lastly, we would like to thank all of you once again for all the support that you have given to our project. Alhamdulillah, the biggest project, perhaps, if not in the Muslim community, but perhaps in North Smithfield, is the construction of our masjid. That is the biggest project, alhamdulillah. And if you take a peek into the progress that has been made, now the framing is done, alhamdulillah, the closing is complete, the roof is complete, windows are already on their way. Soon, inshallah, the windows will be installed as well. So little by little, the work is continuing, and we're hoping that inshallah this year will be the year that we complete this work, this monumental construction project that is a once in a lifetime opportunity for all of us. So we would like to thank all of you for supporting, for doing everything that you can, and going beyond your means. Remember, we give, Allah gives it back to us. I know we think that I gave $100 last week, but Allah gave you 100 more as well. The more you give, the more Allah will give. That is the promise of Allah. وَمَا أَنفَقْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَهُوَ يُخْلِفُ وَهُوَ خَيْرُ الرَّازِقِينَ. The more you will give, the more Allah will give. Because there is no one who is more generous than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So do not stop your spending. Do not look at what you have already given. Always look for opportunity to give more in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the more you will give, the more Allah will give it to you. Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said to Sayyida Asma radiyallahu anha, he said, "Anfiqi, keep spending. La tuhsi fayuhsi Allahu alayk." And when you give in the path of Allah, do not count. Otherwise, Allah will give you with measure as well. Then Allah will count as well. She gave 5, I'm going to give her 5 too. She gave 7, I'm going to give her 7 too. Just give in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will give you without any count and immeasurably as well, because there's no one who's more generous than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's our chance to continue to give, inshallah. As we continue to give, the project continues, inshallah, and we will continue to make progress towards the completion, towards the finish line, inshallah. We're happy that, alhamdulillah, Allah has brought us this far. 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, we would not have imagined having raised over $3 million from within our community. All of this money, alhamdulillah, has come from within our community. And who gave us the ability? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And they spend out of what we have given to them. So Allah gave us the ability to spend, and we spent. And now, alhamdulillah, we are this far, and the finish line is now in sight, inshallah. So we are asking everyone to be generous. So we have a few specific items that we would like to announce, inshallah. Imran?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi
Wa
wabarakatuh. As Mufti Sahib mentioned, alhamdulillah, with the help of the generosity of the community and indeed from the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have reached this far and we have already spent more than $3.5 million. Alhamdulillah. We know they are on the way, probably we are expecting this week or worst case next week, inshallah, we will start installing the windows and the doors. And next immediate item is the electric work. Electric work itself is going to cost us more than $200,000. And we are planning to split the cost into 3 or 4 parts. The initial part that we are planning to do the wiring and some other associated thing with the wiring, that will cost us around $45,000. And then next part will be panels, switches and many other things. And then finally, I think we're gonna pay for the labor and the remaining cost will be covered. So as of now, so as you know, we can continue the work of the electricity. We immediately need to raise $45,000. And alhamdulillah, you have seen that I'm displaying a chart over here. We have 1,000 musallas, each $1,000. And alhamdulillah, we got sponsorship 150 people so far. Each row is having 60, and we have 2 calendars, 2 charts. There's one more chart that also has some name, and this chart has around 124 names. We're gonna put more names. We got more names, inshallah. So we request you to sponsor a musalla that will cost you $1,000. So if we get a sponsorship of 45 musallas, maybe this week and next week, inshallah, we won't stop over here. We can continue the electricity work because that is one of the very important our prerequisite before we plan to use this building partially. So we want to see some names for that. And the second thing, you see, even though Mufti Sahab, he wanted to take the musalla of the Imam, and he has already placed $20,000, but we want to auction that. So if you want to sponsor that, the Imam Musalla, inshallah, maybe you can think about it, and next week probably we can do the auction. So you know, you can come pre-decided what will be your sponsorship for that.
Just make sure it doesn't make you the imam. You just sponsor.
So I would like to see some names who can sponsor at least one normal musalla today. Some names, because we really need, you know, to raise $45,000 this week and next week, inshallah. I see one name, Jazakallah. 2, and inshallah, these charts, they will be displayed over here. And this is how we are planning to track the number of musallas being sponsored so far. So we want to see a few more, inshallah, then we will start Arabic Khutbah. 3, alhamdulillah. 4.
Can I have 4 people coming with me $200 then? 4 plus me. $200 each.
$200. So one musalla will be there. 1. I see 2.
2.
Yeah.
3.
3.
I need one more. 4.
4.
So I will say
Jazakallah brother.
Jazakumullah. Just a quick announcement, inshallah. Tonight, we will have our Friday Family Night program at 8 p.m. Our topic for tonight is the time that the Dajjal will stay on earth and what it is going to be like, inshallah. We started talking about the Dajjal last Friday, and we're continuing that, inshallah. We invite all of you to join us at 8 p.m. and there will be dinner for everyone, inshallah. Please join us with your families, with your friends, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله ذي الجلال والإكرام والجود العظيم والإنعام، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، نعمه كثيرة وآلاؤه غزيرة، وهو الداعي إلى دار السلام. وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله، أدبه ربه فأحسن تأديبه، فكان الأسوة الحسنة للأنام صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه وأتباعه خيرة المربين على فضائل الإسلام. أما بعد، فاتقوا الله عباد الله، فالتقوى ملاك كل فضيلة، والحصن من كل رذيلة، والأصل لكل خير، والحاجز عن كل شر وضير. وقد قال الله جل جلاله خطابا للمؤمنين: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وآمنوا برسوله يؤتكم كفلين من رحمته ويجعل لكم نورا تمشون به ويغفر لكم، والله غفور رحيم. أيها المؤمنون، يخبرنا القرآن الكريم أن الله خلق الإنسان الطاهر السرير في قلبه كل خير، وهو مهيأ غاية التهيئة ليكون من الصالحين الذين تصلح دنياهم وتكون لهم الحسنى في أخراهم. فقال الحق تبارك وتعالى بعد قسمه بأربعة أشياء من مخلوقاته: لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم. ونجد أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يبين للناس هذا المعنى ويقربه إلى الأذهان، فيقول للناس قولا يكون أصلا من أصول التربية وبابا من أبواب الحكمة النبوية. فيقول عليه الصلاة والسلام: كل مولود يولد على الفطرة، فأبواه يهودانه أو ينصرانه أو يمجسانه. فلننظر عباد الله في أثر الوالدين في الأولاد، فالوالدان يكونان سببا لنشأة أولادهما على أحسن حال وخير طريق، فتجد الولد مضرب مثل في السلوك ومحط الأنظار في الصلاح وحسن السيرة، والمثل الحسن في التفوق في دراسته، والمسارع إلى كل خير، والمتفاني في بناء وطنه ونفع المجتمع. والوالدان أو أحدهما قد يكونان سببا لطمس الفطرة التي فطر الله المولود عليها، فتفسد اتباعه ويسوء سلوكه ويكون مصدر قلق وفوضى لنفسه وأسرته ومجتمعه. ولذلك كان على الوالدين أن يدركا أن ولدهما ذكرا كان أو أنثى تتشكل شخصيته وتنبني طباعه بالنظر إليهما ومراقبة حركاتهما وسكناتهما والتقاط كلماتهما وعباراتهما. وقد قال علماء التربية إن 80% من طباع الإنسان وسلوكه تتكون في السنوات الخمس الأولى. ولذلك كان حريا بالوالدين أن يتنبها لهذا الأمر وأن يهتما اهتماما بالغا بهذا الشأن وأن يكونا خير قدوة لأولادهم. قال الله تعالى: ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون للخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون. ولننظر كيف أن اهتمام المجتمع بشأن أرض الإسراء والمسجد الأقصى أثر في الناشئة خير تأثير، فعرفوا قضيتهم وأسهموا في نصرها بكلماتهم ودعواتهم وأموالهم وغيرتهم. والله متم نوره ولو كره الكافرون. أقول ما تسمعون وأستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فاستغفروه يغفر لكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم، وادعوه يستجب لكم إنه هو البر الكريم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له ارحم الراحمين، واشهد ان محمدا عبد الله ورسوله من وصفه ربه بالرحمه للمؤمنين صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى اله وصحبه واتباعه الابرار المتقين. اما بعد، عباد الله، عليكم بكثره الصلاه والسلام على سيد الانام. اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى ال نبينا محمد كما صليت وسلمت على نبينا ابراهيم وعلى ال نبينا ابراهيم، وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى ال نبينا محمد كما باركت على نبينا ابراهيم وعلى ال نبينا ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. وارض الله عن خلفائه الراشدين وعن ازواجه امهات المؤمنين وعن سائر الصحابه اجمعين وعن المؤمنين والمؤمنات وعن جمعنا هذا برحمتك يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم اجعل جمعنا هذا جمعا مرحوما، واجعل تفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما، ولا تدع فينا ولا معنا شقيا ولا محروما. اللهم اعز الاسلام واهد المسلمين الى الحق واجمع كلمتهم على الخير واكسر شوكة الظالمين واكتب السلام والامن لعبادك اجمعين. اللهم كن عونا لاخواننا في ارض الاقصى المبارك، وكن معهم وثبتهم واربط على قلوبهم وصبرهم يا الله، واخذل عدوك وعدوهم واجعل الدائرة عليه يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم اشف مرضانا وعاف مبتلانا وارحم موتانا. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات إنك سميع قريب مجيب الدعاء. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله تعالى يذكركم وادعوه يستجيب لكم، ولذكر الله تعالى أعلى وأولى وعز وجل وتم وهم وأقوى وأكبر.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
أقيموا صفوفكم واعتدلوا. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الله الله أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك وتعالى. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم انك حميد مجيد. اللهم اعز الاسلام والمسلمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين المظلومين. اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين. اللهم انج المستضعفين. اللهم انصر اخواننا في فلسطين. اللهم انصر اخواننا في غزه. اللهم انصرهم نصرا مؤزرا. اللهم كن لهم عونا ونصيرا. اللهم حرر المسجد الاقصى. اللهم استر عوراتهم وامن روعاتهم. اللهم احفظهم من بين ايديهم ومن خلفهم وعن ايمانهم وعن شمائلهم. اللهم ثبت اقدامهم واربط على قلوبهم. اللهم دمر اعداءك اعداء الدين. اللهم زلزل اقدامهم. اللهم شتت شملهم ومزق جمعهم ودمر ديارهم وخرب بلادهم. اللهم احصهم عددا واقتلهم بددا ولا تلق منهم احدا وانزل بهم بأسك الذي لا ترده عن القوم المجرمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.